Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Gifford here, and today we are going to talk about lesson 0.2, changing units of measure between systems. So after this lesson, students will be able to convert units of measure between customary and metric systems. So let's take a look at a few examples. So in each of these from example 1, we're going to complete each sentence. So we have to translate or change 30 inches and put that into centimeters. So what I'm going to suggest that we do is we're going to set up a proportion where we have inches on the top. So we have 30 inches, and we want to figure out how many centimeters this is. Boy, my 30 doesn't really look like a 30, so I'm going to rewrite that. And I will go back here and say 30 inches. And so looking up at the table, what information do we know about inches and centimeters? We know that 1 inch is equal to 2.5 centimeters. And so from here, we want to figure out what this missing value is, where this question mark is. So what I like to do is take a look at my two ratios, my fractions that I have set up, and I look for something that I can easily multiply. Well, here I see 1 in the numerator on the second fraction and 30 in the numerator in the first fraction. So I know that I can multiply one numerator by 30 to make 30. So if I'm going to keep things consistent and in a proportion, I'm also going to multiply 2.5 by 30 in order to figure out what that missing value is. So when we do 30 times 2.5, we get 75. So what we have figured out up here in our ratio is that 30 inches is equal to 75 centimeters. Let's look at our second example. We have 5 kilometers is approximately how many miles? So just like we did before, I'm going to set up my proportion. In this case, we're going to have 5 kilometers over how many miles? And we're going to set this equal to, and if we look up above in our table, I want to figure out or look at the table and see if we have anything about kilometers in 1 kilometer. So if we look at the table, we see that 1 kilometer is equal to approximately 0.6 miles. So just like we did with the first example, the nice thing is I realize I can do 1 times 5 to make 5. And so then I can take 0.6 times 5 in order to figure out what that missing value is. So 5 times 0.6 is equal to 3. And so what we have figured out again here is that 5 kilometers is approximately the same as 3 miles. Very straightforward with just one step involved here. So let's take a look at our next example. In this case, we want to change units of capacity. So we're taking a look at example 2 here. The first one is 7 quarts is approximately how many liters. So just like we did with example number 1, I'm going to set up our ratio, 7 quarts over question mark liters. And we're going to set this equal to, looking up above, now I have quarts over liters, so I want to look at my table and I notice that I have 1 quart equals 0.9 liters. So from here I'm going to put 1 quart over 0.9 liters, and just like the examples on the previous slide, I notice that 1 times 7 is 7, so I can do 0.9 times 7 as well to figure out our missing value. In this case, it's 6.3. So just like before, what we figured out in that example on the previous slide is that 7 quarts is approximately the same as 6.3 liters. Now with the second one, example 2, letter B, we can't go straight forward from liters to gallons. But what do you know about liters? I know that I can go from liters to quarts. If you look up at the table, we have liters and quarts up here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is change 10 liters, and I'm going to figure out how many quarts this is. And we just found up above in the table that 1 liter is equal to about 1.1 quarts. Again, just like the other examples, 1 times 10 is 10. So then we can do 1.1 times 10, and we get 11. So what we have figured out so far is that 10 liters is 11 quarts. And now what we want to do is go from quarts to gallons. So we're going to use this 11 quarts that we just figured out, and we're going to go from 11 quarts. We want to figure out how many gallons this is. And it's not in the table, but it is known that 4 quarts is equal to 1 gallon. Now in this case, our multiplication isn't as easy to go from 4 to 11. So the next strategy that I would suggest that you do is cross multiplication and divide. So we do 11 times 1 is 11, and then we divide by the number we haven't used yet, and that's 4. And when you do that, that ends up giving us 2.75. So in this case, what we have figured out, we went from liters to quarts, and then from quarts to gallons. So we have figured out that 10 liters is approximately 2.75 quarts. So that's units of capacity. Now the last example that I have for you is to do units of weight or mass. In this case, the only example that we have is we want to change 58.5 kilograms to pounds. So just like all the other problems, we're going to set up 58.5 kilograms over question mark pounds, and we're going to set this equal to, now if we take a look at our table, we have 1 kilogram is equal to 2.2 pounds. Oops, let me try to fix that. Alright, so 1 kilogram is equal to 2.2 pounds. The nice thing with this one is 1 times 58.5 is 58.5. So to keep this in proportion, you can do 2.2 times 58.5. And when we do that, that ends up becoming 128.7. So what we have figured out here is that 58.5 kilograms is approximately 128.7 pounds. So there you have a few examples about changing between different units of measure.